When we debated this at Cabinet on Friday, my opening remark to Theresa was, Prime Minister, as you know, I'm going to be the odd man out on this. And she knew that because I'd written to her earlier the week telling her...
But you supported her?
No, it's Cabinet collective responsibility applies. I didn't say anything thereafter. And that was because I was thinking about the consequences. I took the view at the time that this was not the best strategy, that there were better strategies available. We'd been establishing them. And that I thought it would, as you said, be a risk at least of delivering a poor outcome. So I was very clear on Friday. And I took 2 days to think through. It's a very important, and for me, it's a very important decision. And I wanted to talk to my chairman and my president of my association about it. That's what Conservatives do. And make a decision. Of course, talk to my wife, make a decision, come back and tell Theresa.
You could have had those conversations because you knew perfectly well what was going to be in the plan. You could have had those conversations before you sat around the cabinet table on Friday, and you could have said, look, I would like to be able to support you during this debate, but unfortunately I can't, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave the government.
With respect, you can't have conversations with your association chairman and president about upcoming cabinet discussions.
On the other hand, there are telephones. You can talk to your colleagues you know perfectly well in your constituency.
We didn't have phones in Chequers. That's rather famously the case.
But you did before you got to Chequers, and you knew perfectly well what was going to be.
As I said, John, this is a matter that required very, very careful thought. I first discussed this with the Prime Minister of the policy on Monday of last week. I said at that time I was not at all happy with it, but I'd like to read the policy and the document. We did that on Wednesday midday, wrote to her and said, these are the issues I think are problematic. And then we had that debate on Friday. Of course, I didn't know what the outcome of the debate would be on Friday. We were, it was a forthright debate, but the Prime Minister won the argument, as it were, by 2 or 3 to 1, I think, in cabinet. So it's this is the sort of thing you have to think through carefully and do properly.
But for you,
you don't rush into it. You're rushing out in the middle of a cabinet meeting. Doing
I wasn't suggesting that at all. What I was suggesting was that you might have given it due thought, as obviously you did, before the cabinet meeting, long before the cabinet meeting, days before the cabinet meeting.
Well, one day. That's all.
Well, you knew roughly, the nation knew what was going to be in that plan days before it was published. It was leaked, as you know, to the media pretty extensively, indeed very extensive.
These things, as you discussed earlier, I think with Jeremy Hunt, who was going out as I came in, are very complex, very subtle. And it was entirely possible. In fact, there were some people asked for some of these policies to be changed at the meeting. They weren't, and so there we were with a decision. I had to think through the consequences.
And you had to leave.
This is not a simple or easy decision for anybody, and it takes time.
And you had to leave because you lost the argument.
Well, I had to leave because, not because I lost the argument, but because...
But you did lose the argument.
Yeah, well, of course I lost the argument in Cabinet. But the important thing here is that, in my view, this policy has got a number of weaknesses, and it's not as though it's somebody else's responsibility for which I can sort of share cabinet responsibility. I would be front and centre in delivering this policy, explaining it to the House, persuading the House it was right, and then going out and delivering it with the European Union. And frankly, just as it was known that there were what the policy was, it was also known that I had concerns about it. It would not have been a plausible thing to do, and I wouldn't have done a good job at it. And one of the things I said to the Prime Minister in the letter was, I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. And but if that is the case, then the best person to do this is somebody who really believes in it, not me.
And there are others in the cabinet who agree with you. We know that. Boris Johnson is one of them. They have deep reservations. They've made it perfectly clear. Would you now that you yourself, as the Brexit Secretary, have stood down, would you now expect them, would you now want them to follow suit?
No, look.
No.
This is...
But this is crucially important to the future of the country, as you tell us.
Firstly, I'm not going to describe the views of other cabinet members.
Well, you don't need to, with respect, because we know what they are.
Well, that you may think. But it's not for me to make other people's decisions. These decisions are very, very hard to make. They have consequences, career-ending consequences, all of that. And the simple truth is people can only make these decisions of conscience, decisions of principle, by themselves in their own mind. You can't make the decision for somebody else, and you can't offload it on somebody else. It's your own decision, your own responsibility. you're all your own fault or your own.
And you acted out of principle, is what you're saying.
Well, yes. I mean, I've been.
Well, therefore, shouldn't the others act out of principle?
No. Look, it's different for me. I'm the one who has to deliver this. If well, it would have been if I was still the Brexit secretary, and as such, I'd had to do something which I didn't believe in and which I didn't believe could work or would work as well as other strategies. And that's actually not a tenable position for somebody who believes in Brexit.
But you could apply exactly that argument to those who are still in the cabinet who do share your views.
No, they don't have that responsibility.
They don't have the same responsibility, but there is this cabinet, as you said, cabinet collective responsibility. And by accepting that, and Robin Cook made this very clear over the Iraq War, as we well know, and he resigned not because he was responsible for those decisions, but because he thought it was taking the country in a very seriously wrong direction. It was a matter of principle to him, and what I'm suggesting to you is that others might take the same view.
Well, again, he was Foreign Secretary, so it was central to him. But the simple truth is there are many things in Cabinet. In any government policy, there's going to be 10 or 20% of things you don't agree with. That's normal, and there's nothing unusual about that. If they're central to you, however, if those things are central to your own policy, your own department, your own delivery, then it becomes much, much more sharp-edged. It's much, much more
all right. What is
central to you.
What is the more sensible approach then? What should she now be doing that she did not do? What should have been in that deal?
Well, it's quite technical, but I'll keep it as clear as I can. One of the central issues which is problematic in this is this idea of a common rule book. That means the European Union writes the rules for us in effect, and we have to harmonise with it. We have to have the same rules to all intents and purposes. We had said before, we'll try and be substantially similar so we can share the same marketplace, but they'll be our rules, we'll decide them and we'll judge them. So we'll judge them on whether they deliver the right level of safety or emissions or animal welfare or whatever it might be. Judge it that way. As it stands now, we basically are identical or we're not. And that makes it a decision. And whether we like it or not, it'll make a decision very often in the European Court, because that's where the arbitration system will end up. And it will be very, very difficult for Britain for the United Kingdom to not agree. And if it doesn't agree, if it decides not to do something, as Jeremy Hunt was talking about earlier, if it decides not to do something, then what will happen? Well, one of the things that might happen is the fallback option in Northern Ireland might be triggered. Well, that's a devil of a sword of Damocles to hold over Parliament to change a simple regulation.
But surely the point you're missing is that the UK, where we choose to apply the common rule book, each rule will have to be approved by Parliament.
And Parliament will be under a sword of Damocles, both the Northern Ireland one in some circumstances, but also the issue that you do that way. It's decided, very sort of black and white decision, and you say, right, you lose that market in the European Union, and that's really not a very good way of giving Parliament power. It doesn't give. It's, as I say, it's illusory rather than real. That's the problem. This is painting something as being returning sovereignty, returning control to the House of Commons. In practice, it actually isn't doing so.
The Brexit negotiations have to be concluded by October, pretty much. Resigning now gives no time for your successor to get up to speed. That's point number one. And it will surely also result in a worse deal for this country if your successor and his inexperienced team have to start effectively all over again. It's an impossible position.
No, well, the first thing to say is the primary negotiator and it's the Prime Minister. That's something you don't understand.
Of course, but you've been doing something, presumably, in the past couple of years.
It's not quite an of course. I mean, people often don't realise this. The first thing she said to me when she appointed me was, do you understand, David, I will do the primary negotiations. So you've got the Prime Minister supported by...
Based on what you told her, you believe was the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, she's decided not to do that. Well, fair enough, that's her prerogative.
So she simply cut you out?
No. The debate took place last week, and I proposed one approach. She chose another one, which was more conciliatory to the European Union, I think is perhaps the best way to put it. And she, I think, believes that will deliver a better response from them. My fear, My fear is that they'll take what we've offered already and then demand some more. That's been their practice throughout the last year. And I fear, in fact, that if anything, this is just the start. Not the
But
end
you
of
could
it.
see that coming for a very long time.
Well, not with this, because we've only been talking about this for a week. And it seems to me we're giving too much away too easily, and that's a dangerous strategy at this time.
But it's out there now. It's done. The deal is done. And that is the basis on which Europe is going to approach it.
Well, hopefully we will resist very strongly any attempt to get any further concessions from us on this, because I think this is I actually think this is further than we should have gone already.
So what should we do now?
Well, I will argue for being as firm as possible. I'm hoping, perhaps one side effect of my departure might be to put a little pressure on the government not to make any other concessions. And I will keep arguing to say that there are better ways to do it than this.
But they're in no position if that is indeed what Brussels...
Well, that's the risk. That's the risk.
And how do you deal with that?
Well,
it's not a risk, it's the reality. I mean, the fact is we have literally weeks left.
No. Let's let you. It gets shortened to October, then it gets shortened to weeks. I suspect what will happen is we'll get to October and we may have a special council in November. There'll be all sorts of things. If you watch any European negotiation, they go to the wire. They go to the last month, week, day, hour, minute sometimes. And that's what happened here. That's how the pressure is put on. That's pressure put on from both sides.
But pressure now aided and abetted by you, in a sense, because what they'll be doing, you can imagine them in Brussels this morning, rubbing their hands and say, look, so much disagreement in London. I mean, even the man in charge of the Brexit negotiations at the has resigned. For goodness sake, what a mess they're in. We shall now take advantage of it, given that they are in the business.
Now can you do it in French? In Mr. Barnier's accent.
Well, precisely.
No. And the answer is no. That's not what will happen. No, they'll see.
It's not?
No, because they'll see back pressure. They watch British politics very closely. You're right in that respect. But they will see back pressure against going any further. That's what's important here. That there is pressure on the government not to take this any further at all. It's already, in my view, gone further than it should have done, but it's no further.
Sorry, go on.
No further was what I said. Sorry, did your headphone go?
Yeah, no, I had a wee bit of problem with the headphone now.
Yeah.
All right, so
jamming from Brussels.
Indeed, I told him to call back. Yeah. Look, the situation is at the moment we have no Brexit secretary. We've got to appoint a new one very, very quickly, right? Although you've said it doesn't actually much matter who is the Brexit secretary, because the Prime Minister makes all the decisions anyway, and the civil service does the rest.
With the greatest respect, I didn't say that. And indeed, in my letter, I said that it's very important she has a Brexit secretary who believes in this strategy.
Right.
And that's the most important thing in many ways, isn't it?
Right. So they have to find a new Brexit secretary who believes in the strategy. Yep. They also have a political problem here, don't they? Because what your resignation is going to be seen as, and you've accepted that it may not achieve, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said you don't expect it to achieve very much in reality. If you're being realistic about it, you don't expect the policy to change as a result of your resignation, do you?
Again, you're putting words in my mouth.
Well, I confess to that, but I'm asking you...
If nothing else, it'll put pressure on to make no further concessions. That's of itself is quite important.
Why will it do that?
Well, because I think you'll see people arguing. You've had people on your own programme this morning arguing that very fact.
Can Theresa May survive this?
Oh, yes, of course.
Because your resignation has now become a sort of rallying call, hasn't it? Or a rallying centre for those who are opposed to her leadership.
Well, I hope not. I hope not. Look, I like Theresa May. I think she's a good Prime Minister. We have a difference over this strategy.
Have you spoken to her, by the way?
Yes, last night.
You had a conversation, not just the letter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would like to see her face-to-face, but she was in Sonning and I was in London, so I couldn't do that. We had a telephone conversation. But I like her. I think she's a good Prime Minister.
But you have weakened her, haven't you? There's no question about that.
No, look.
Oh, come on, look at the coverage of your resignation.
Yeah, it's one day.
And it's a matter of hours old.
It's one day.
Right.
It's one day. You know, she's got to have a Brexit secretary who will deliver on her strategy. That's not weakening. That's actually enhancing the effectiveness of the strategy.
If it all goes wrong for her, that is, and if there is this effect that lots and lots of people say, more people say she should pack it in, and all those 7 who were opposed to the deal.
Well, I won't be one of them.
You will not be one of them.
I will not be one. No, look,
hang on, I haven't even asked the question. You won't be one of what? You won't
I won't be encouraging people to do that. I think it's the wrong thing to do.
That wasn't the question I was going to ask.
Oh, right, okay.
If people do that, and some people will, there's no question about that, is there? Would you throw your hat in the ring, or are you prepared to say this morning, under no circumstances would I stand for the leadership of the Conservative
No, I wouldn't.
Party?
And
Which?
No, I wouldn't throw my hat in the ring. What I'm saying to you now is, if I'd want to bring down Theresa May, now's not the time. It would have been after the election when we were weakened and so on. What did I do instead? I flew down from Yorkshire in the middle of the night to be with her at 6 a.m. to say, keep going and I will support you. And your colleagues in the studio will tell you that's what I did in the ensuing days. I was the most vocal supporter of her. And, I think you should take from that what my view of Theresa May is, that she's somebody who's a good Prime Minister and deserves support. But on this, she and I have a different strategy, a different approach, and we take different views on what we both want to do, which is achieve the best for Britain out of Brexit. We both believe that. Nobody disputes that. It's just we want to do it different ways.
David Davis, thank you very much.
Thank you.